Welcome to the fiscal year 2026 executive budget rollout. I'm Sarah Brown, the Director of the Governor's Office of Strategic Planning and Budgeting. Arizona's economy is exceeding the U.S. and many other states due to rapid business growth, population expansion, and positive labor conditions. Governor Hobbs has cultivated an economy that attracts substantial interest from businesses and individuals seeking a thriving environment. After resolving the budget shortfall of the last fiscal year, which was done without using the state's rainy day fund, and while ensuring that critical services were uninterrupted, Arizona's state revenue outlook is positive. The governor's budget makes targeted investments in lowering the costs of and expanding access to housing, childcare, education, groceries, and healthcare, and in creating more jobs for Arizonans. The executive budget also makes critical investments in addressing veteran homelessness, K-12 public education, local border support, pay raises for frontline law enforcement, correctional officers, and firefighters, reproductive health care, and securing the state's long-term water supplies. The executive budget is focused on bringing more affordability and opportunity to Arizonans, expanding pathways to good jobs with good wages, and ensuring a strong, thriving economy. Coming up next, our economist will present on current economic conditions and the fiscal year 2026 budget outlook. From there, budget analysts will walk through the executive budget by priority area.
Hi, I'm Liz St. Clair, a principal economist with OSPB. This graph shows historical U.S. GDP growth by quarter from 2019 through the most recent reporting, which is the third quarter of 2024. 2024 has shown remarkable economic strength despite the challenges from high interest rates from the Federal Reserve's monetary tightening cycle. Typical U.S. GDP growth rates have ranged between 2 and 3%. In the chart, you can see the large swings during the pandemic, and in the past year, U.S. GDP appears to be returning to pre-pandemic economic trends, with the third quarter of 2024 landing at 3.1%, which is the highest growth for the year. The year is projected to finish strong, with GDP in the fourth quarter coming in between 2.5% and 3%, and with 2025 projected to be around 2% to 3% growth. These predictions are decidedly more optimistic than they have been in previous years, when most experts were contemplating slow growth and even recessions. Switching over to the Arizona economy, this chart shows Arizona's unemployment rate compared to the U.S. rate. The unemployment rates are remarkably low for both the United States and Arizona. Currently, the U.S. unemployment rate stands at 4.1%, while Arizona has an even lower rate of 3.7%. In May of 2024, Arizona's unemployment rate reached an historical low of 3.4%. The lowest level since 1976. The unemployment rate remains historically low and below the national average, and the outlook remains positive. This chart shows the percentage change in growth in jobs for the U.S. and the Arizona from 2022 to the present. The strength and the endurance of the labor market has been impressive post-pandemic. In November, Arizona added about 60,000 jobs, an increase of 1.8% over November of 2023, compared to the U.S., which had an increase of 1.4% for the same period. Job growth has normalized from the unusually large gains observed in 2022 and in 2023. And it's looking probable that the U.S. economy will continue to slow inflation while keeping employment steady. Arizona is a top job growth state. The U.S. map shows the rank of states by yearly job growth. The darker the shade, the better the ranking. As of November 2024, Arizona ranks 10th in the nation for job growth over the previous year. Healthcare has been the most significant contributor to job growth in 2024. The Arizona labor market is currently at an optimal place, with both strong job creation and low unemployment. Switching over to Arizona's economic growth, Arizona continues to generate substantial economic growth that aligns with the strong national economic growth. Arizona's real GDP increased by 3.1% over the preceding period in the third quarter of 2024. Arizona has consistently been one of the fastest growing states in the 5-year period ending quarter 3 of 24. The Arizona economy grew at 19.6%, making it the 4th fastest growing state economy during that period. The chart on the left shows Arizona's real GDP growth compared to the U.S. GDP growth. And the chart on the right shows GDP growth from October 3rd, 2019 through the present. The bars at the top of the state and the medium state and the bottom state as compared to the Arizona rate. Arizona is also a top destination for people and businesses. The American Community Survey conducted by the U.S. Census Bureau confirms Arizona's appeal as a destination for internal migration within the United States. The state is in the 5th position in terms of net population gain from people moving within the U.S. from other states. Furthermore, Arizona's positive net migration extends to the business sector. According to the most recent data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the state ranks 6th in net firm migration, indicating a favorable environment for businesses to establish and expand their operations. The chart on the left shows the top 10 total net migration by state, and the chart on the right shows the top 10 firm migration by state. Moving on to inflation. Inflation has fallen rapidly in the last several years. The U.S. Consumer Price Index fell from 6.5% in 2022 to 3.4% in 2023 and is currently at 2.7%. With the underlying economic conditions normalizing, the downward trend should continue throughout 2025, barring any unforeseen shocks to the economy. While the rate at which prices are going up is slowing, prices are still high, and the cost of many goods and services will likely remain high in the next several years. Looking at Phoenix MSA, prices in the Phoenix metro area are 1 point below the U.S. at 1.6% as of the latest reading. Phoenix's rate of inflation has been running below the U.S. and below most other metro areas within states that are tracked by the U.S. Census. As of October 2024, Phoenix is tied for the second lowest of those 20 metro areas. The chart on the left compares the U.S. CPI and the Phoenix metro CPI. The chart on the right shows the 5 lowest CPI inflation rates within the 20 metro areas that the U.S. Census Bureau tracks. The next slide highlights the potential federal policy impacts. The broader economic outlook is clouded by uncertainty regarding post-election federal policy. Although the federal fiscal policy from the new administration is not yet definitive, fulfillment of various campaign promises could impact the nation and Arizona. Workforce restrictions will lead to a limited labor supply, and Arizona already trends towards having more positions available than there are people to fill them. This could result in labor shortages, putting pressure on wages and increasing inflation. Uncertainty looms on how widespread tariffs would be, but broad-based tariffs could escalate trade tensions and disrupt global supply chains, ultimately leading to higher production costs, which leads to inflation and increased prices for consumers. Regulatory policy shifts create business upheavals, which could yield positive or negative impacts across various industries, with some benefiting and some losing. There are also risks to programs such as the CHIPS Act, which Arizona has greatly benefited from. The enactment or extension of tax cuts in the near term could create an uptick in economic growth. However, they ultimately lead to larger U.S. budget deficits, and large budget deficits can be inflationary. Adjustments to federal health policies, such as reductions or limits to federal funding, puts Arizona's medical plans at risk. Reducing the federal medical assistant percentage, known as FMAP, for Medicaid expansion from 90% to the regular FMAP, roughly 65%, would impose a dramatic fiscal shift from the federal government to the state, and the state would have to cover a larger share. And many Arizonans could become under or uninsured. Cost shifting could also occur as hospitals and private sector businesses would be unable to recover costs from patients that can't pay for their services. Moving on to revenues, this bar graph depicts ongoing revenues. The beige bar shows actuals for 2023 and 2024. The teal bars show the fiscal year 2025 enacted budget, and the orange bars show the fiscal year 2026 executive budget. The difference between the enacted and the executive budget are shown above the orange bars. The executive budget forecasts moderate revenue increases through fiscal year 2028. The major tax revenue categories are projected to have gains over fiscal year 2024. Unlike last year, the ending balance in 2024 is positive at just over $1 billion. A $385 million surplus, as the ending balance was previously projected at $639 million. The forecasted general fund revenues are $445 million higher than the enacted forecast, with this difference growing to $885 million in 2026. It should be noted that this revenue picture does not include one-time adjustments to the revenue. Looking at the spending forecast, this bar chart illustrates the executive expenditures. The executive budget has moderate spending increases through fiscal year 2028, in line with the positive revenue outlook, and includes additional baseline caseload adjustments and new executive initiatives. Arizona continues to maintain the Budget Stabilization Fund balance, which ensures economic stability in the future. Arizona's Budget Stabilization Fund balance is expected to reach over $1.5 billion in fiscal year 2025. This table provides an overview of the executive budget, looking at the total fund sources and the total fund uses, showing the ending balances and the ending structural balances for fiscal year 2026 through 2028. The executive has effectively balanced increasing revenues with strategic increases in overall spending. This approach has enabled the executive to allocate necessary resources to critical areas and drive progress throughout the state. The fiscal year 2026 budget is fiscally sound, growing total ongoing spending by just 7.5%. while still meeting all of the state's prior and new commitments. The economy has performed well, with strong growth, full employment, and moderating inflation. However, the future course of the economy remains uncertain and is contingent upon a multitude of impending uncertainties, ranging from geopolitical tensions to the potential implications of federal economic policy. These factors could create a complex and unpredictable future outlook. In reviewing executive funding, beginning with that estimated $1 billion in cash balance left over from fiscal year 2024, the executive budget includes $794 million in new executive initiatives, and $778 million in baseline changes, leaving the general fund with $147 million in excess cash at the end of fiscal year 2026. Of the $794 billion in new executive initiatives, 68% of those funds are one-time in nature, maintaining fiscal discipline, while the remaining 32% represent ongoing initiatives. In fiscal year 2026, the ending cash balance is attributed to the ESA reforms, and absent any reforms, the balance is relatively small.
Hi, I'm Lexi Bensberg, a budget analyst with OSPB. Housing affordability continues to be a challenge for many Arizonans. To encourage the continued development of affordable housing throughout the state, the executive budget proposes an expansion of the Arizona Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, or LIHTC. The Arizona LIHTC program began in FY2022 and is currently scheduled to sunset after the last 4 million credits are awarded in FY2025. The proposed LIHTC expansion will provide 10 million credits annually, starting in FY2026, and extend the scheduled sunset date to FY2031. The Arizona LIHTC program, which works in addition to the federal LIHTC program, allows qualifying residential rental property developers to claim tax credits against their income or insurance premium tax liability in equal amounts over 10 years as a way to help offset the cost and promote the development of affordable housing for working-class residents across the state. The state tax credits in FY2024 led to the start of production of 99 affordable housing units in rural communities and 483 affordable housing units in metropolitan areas across Arizona. To further address the housing affordability crisis in Arizona, the executive budget includes an additional 3 investments to help lower housing costs. The first investment is a $15 million general fund deposit into the Housing Trust Fund. Since Governor Hobbs has taken office, $165 million has been deposited into the Housing Trust Fund. This investment has resulted in the Department of Housing issuing grants to provide services such as emergency rental assistance, home repair, and gap financing for affordable housing developers. This $15 million investment will allow the Department of Housing to continue providing services while working with constituents to identify the areas of most need. The second investment is a $5 million general fund deposit to create the Homes for Heroes Fund, which will start an initiative at the Department of Veterans Services to end veteran homelessness across Arizona over the next decade. The initiative will start with creating an interagency strategic plan in fiscal year 2026. The third investment is $5 million in ARPA to the Arizona's Home Mortgage Assistance Program, which brings the total investment to date to $18 million. This statewide program, a collaboration between the Department of Housing and the Arizona Industrial Development Authority, expands homeownership opportunities for qualifying moderate, working class, and rural home buyers through enhanced down payment assistance and mortgage interest rate relief. The executive budget also utilizes existing fund sources at the Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System, or ACCESS, and the Department of Housing to draw down tens of millions of federal dollars for the Housing and Health Opportunities, or H2O program. For a state investment of $5.3 million in FY2026, H2O allows ACCESS to draw down $49.8 million in federal monies. The program provides transitional housing services to unsheltered Medicaid members with an emphasis on those with a serious mental illness diagnosis, with the goal of lowering the total cost of member care by reducing the need for emergency services and crisis interventions by increasing regular preventative care visits.
Hello, I am Sarah Bogus, a senior budget analyst with OSPB. Without reliable access to childcare, parents and other caregivers may miss work, skip opportunities for promotion, or leave the workforce altogether. Childcare helps employers prosper by having employees whose time and attendance they can depend on, which leads to stronger earnings, employment gains, and greater tax revenues. In addition, childcare providers are struggling to sustain operations, and as many as 76,690 children need care, but slots are not available. This slide highlights the governor's Bright Futures AZ initiative, a comprehensive set of childcare solutions to meet Arizona's workforce needs. This initiative includes $7 million from the general fund to develop a public-private partnership that reduces the cost of childcare by sharing the cost between a family, business, and the state. Establish an out-of-school time grant program for youth ages 5 to 12, and create a childcare tax credit for businesses that create on-site childcare. The executive budget also includes $159,800 in state funding to add 3 positions within the Department of Health Services Division of Licensing Services to provide coaching to childcare providers. The table in the bottom right-hand corner breaks down the components of the Bright Futures AZ initiative that will be funded with American Rescue Plan Act or ARPA dollars, including early childhood educator scholarships and an expansion of the Office of Economic Opportunities micro-business loan program to include childcare providers. As noted on the previous slide, childcare is crucial to grow and strengthen Arizona's economy. Disruptions in childcare lead to a $4.7 billion economic impact to Arizona's families, employers, and state economy each year, with families losing $3 billion in earnings and businesses losing $958 million in reduced revenue and increased hiring costs. Therefore, the executive budget includes another significant childcare investment to further expand access and affordability. This investment comes at a pivotal time as childcare costs as a share of a family's income should not exceed 7%, but the share for Arizona families far exceeds this level. The executive budget includes $112.4 million from the general fund and $78.7 million from the Child Care and Development Fund to provide additional support for the Department of Economic Security's Child Care Assistance Program. This investment will expand families' access to high-quality settings by continuing the 50% high-quality enhancement rate, help child care providers recruit and retain educators to sustain operations, and cut the projected child care waitlist in half, thereby allowing the department to serve an average of about 25,400 children per month. The executive launched the Talent Ready AZ initiative in September 2024 with the goal of providing increased access to post-secondary education and training that leads to good jobs in high-demand and high-growth industries. In the spirit of this initiative, the executive budget includes funding to the Arizona Promise program by $20 million and to Arizona Teachers Academy by $15 million. The executive budget also invests $6 million for the Adult Education Program, $3 million for the Dual Enrollment Program, and $3 million for the Arizona Nurse Education Investment Program. The executive budget includes 2 notable investments to lower grocery costs for Arizona families. First, the executive budget includes $3.8 million for school meals grants that reduce or eliminate the school meal copay for families who are eligible for reduced-price school meals. Second, the executive budget includes $2.3 million in FY2026 for the Sunbucks program, which provides working-class families a $120 grocery benefit that may be used during the summer months when food insecurity for children is often exacerbated. The $2.3 million for Sunbucks in 2026 will draw down over $90 million in federal funding.
Hello, I'm Zach Hughes, a budget analyst forecaster with OSPB. The executive budget invests in multiple initiatives to address the burden of healthcare costs on Arizonians. These initiatives include $1.3 million general fund and $222.9 million in federal expenditure authority to cover traditional healing services and Indian health service facilities, $344,000 general fund and $3.9 million in federal expenditure authority to expand eligibility of coverage for family planning from $42,744 to $62,400 for a household of 4, and $263,000 general fund and $982,000 in federal expenditure authority to permanently extend postpartum coverage from 60 days to 12 months. Arizona has been a hub of job creation by attracting businesses that bring high-paying jobs to the state. To maintain Arizona's presence in the job market, the executive budget includes a one-time $10 million deposit from the general fund into the Arizona Competes Fund, or ACF. The Arizona Competes Fund is utilized by the Arizona Commerce Authority, or ACA, to provide economic development grants that help Arizona companies expand within the state and to attract out-of-state companies to Arizona. In fiscal year 2024, grants issued by the ACA led to the creation of over 24,000 jobs with an average salary of over $75,000, outpacing the state's average wage of $41,000. Major grant recipients in recent years include TSMC, LG, and Lucid. The executive budget also includes $1.8 million ongoing from the lottery fund to the Arizona Competes Fund, bringing the total annual waterfall deposit to $3.5 million. This increase enhances the sustainability of the ACF and will ensure that the Commerce Authority has the ability to help Arizona remain an attractive business destination. In addition to attracting new business and promoting job growth within Arizona, the Commerce Authority leverages monies in the Major Events Fund to provide local organizing committees support in the competitive bid process and operation of major events. In recent years, nearly $1 billion has been contributed to the state's GDP through attraction of events such as the 2024 NCAA Final Four and the 2023 Super Bowl. To keep Arizona as a leading destination for major events, the executive budget includes a one-time $5 million deposit from the general fund into the Major Events Fund, ensuring the future of major events in the state.
The executive budget includes $15 million for the Stopping Arizona's Fentanyl Epidemic, or SAFE initiative. These funds go towards strengthening law enforcement's efforts to reduce the flow of fentanyl and other illegal drugs into the state. Additionally, it continues an ongoing investment of $17.2 million for border drug interdiction efforts. Investments include $5 million additional to the Local Border Support SLI to provide grants to law enforcement agencies to fund drug interdiction efforts in border communities, increasing the ongoing annual investment from $13.2 million to $18.2 million. $5 million to expand existing drug interdiction efforts under the Counter Drug Task Force to curtail drug trafficking activities throughout the state and reduce threats posed by transnational criminal organizations, with a focus on assisting law enforcement agencies in combating fentanyl. $2 million to continue the 2024 effort to equip first responders with naloxone and related overdose reversal medications. $2 million to expand access to medication-assisted treatment in underserved rural communities, and $1 million to launch a statewide fentanyl awareness and education campaign to improve the safety of children and awareness of parents. The executive also allocates $20.7 million one-time from ARPA in FY2026 and $20.7 million ongoing from the general fund in FY2027 to backfill reduced Victims of Crime Act federal grant dollars. This funding will be allocated as follows. $2.3 million to the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission to cover victim compensation and victim assistance program operating costs. $9.1 million to the Department of Economic Security to continue providing essential services, including case management and crisis intervention to vulnerable adults who have been a victim. $9.3 million to the Department of Public Safety for grants to local entities that offer services for victims of crime. The executive budget also includes $33.3 million from the general fund ongoing and $1.7 million from other funds ongoing for a 5% pay increase for frontline law enforcement. This pay increase will enhance the state's competitiveness, improve retention in these critical fields, and reduce the costly impacts of turnover in these fields. This slide showcases all of the additional investments that the executive is making at the Department of Public Safety. The following are key investments worth highlighting, including $788,200 ongoing and 9 FTE positions to bolster the 911 workforce and improve response times. 2 additional positions to help quickly and effectively connect the department's employees who are regularly exposed to graphic and stressful emergency situations with free mental health services through the Employee Assistant Program, and permanent funding to fully cover the costs of uniforms, which have not been fully funded on an ongoing basis for 20 years.
Hi, my name is Juldeesh Loizy Madingu, and I am a budget analyst at OSPB. In April 2023, the Prison Healthcare Federal Court injunction ordered a set of requirements that the Department of Corrections, Rehabilitation, and Reentry must adhere to in order to ensure compliance within healthcare services for incarcerated individuals. To meet these requirements, the executive budget includes an increase in funding in fiscal year 2025 and fiscal year 2026 to fully cover the increased costs of providing healthcare services to incarcerated persons. Since Governor Katie Hobbs has taken office, the Department of Corrections, Rehabilitation, and Reentry has made significant progress in addressing the requirements focusing on compliance, operational improvements, and making substantial financial investments. In fiscal year 2025, more than $179 million has been allocated to implement essential changes in healthcare services and enhance conditions for incarcerated persons. The funding will support electronic record management, radio frequency identification, medications, and the creation of 388 new medical and mental health positions through the NAFCARE contract. In fiscal year 2025, the executive budget includes a one-time supplemental funding increase of $6 million from the general fund. For fiscal year 2026, the executive budget includes an additional $6 million increase in ongoing funding for the general fund. These ongoing investments demonstrate the department's commitment to enhancing conditions of care and confinement and also maintaining compliance with state and federal requirements. The injunction mandates that the court evaluate the security and the health care staffing needs within state prisons. This involves conducting a staffing study, which is currently in progress. The findings of this study may affect the funding needed by the department to ensure that the healthcare services for incarcerated individuals are fully compliant. Enhanced mail scanning is becoming a nationwide method for intercepting and reducing introduction of contraband via physical mail. Drug-soaked paper designed to look like a regular letter is a form of contraband that is at risk of entering prisons. To address this growing concern, the executive budget includes $2.7 million in ongoing funding and $392,200 in one-time funding to begin enhancing mail scanning processes. This initiative is comprised of two key components: off-site mail scanning services, which allow the department to partner with a contractor to process incoming general mail at a secure facility while allowing mail to be digitalized for delivery to incarcerated individuals. This will allow for the interception of contraband off-site and prevent it from entering prisons. On-site mail scanning expansion will expand the number of mail scanners available in prisons. This will ensure that all incoming lawyer and attorney correspondence is screened for contraband while remaining in compliance with state and federal laws regarding communication confidentiality. This initiative enables the department to prioritize the health and the safety of all individuals within correctional facilities while upholding the legal and ethical standards for correspondence, and also demonstrating Arizona's commitment to improving prison operations and reducing recidivism.
Hi, I am Luke Vanderskoff, a budget analyst with OSPB. The executive budget includes $1 million in one-time other fund funding for the Attorney General's office to enforce retail compliance with the state's voter-approved marijuana laws. The Attorney General's office shall use the monies to issue a statewide notice to retailers informing them of the illegal status of these products and fund grants for local law enforcement agencies to promote compliance with state laws. The activities supported by these grants may include cease and desist letters and public awareness campaigns. To protect children, the executive budget includes $335,000 in ongoing other fund funding to support these two positions at the Attorney General's office in the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. The two positions are currently supported by one-time monies being depleted by the end of fiscal year 2025. These two positions will continue working on identifying 96 unnamed perpetrators, support 26 active investigations, prosecute 58 charged defendants, and continue the prosecution of 19 defendants. Fighting fraud and abuse is also included in the executive budget at $204,100 in ongoing other fund funding to support 4 additional positions within the Attorney General's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. The additional positions will allow the MFCU to investigate an additional 50 cases per year and recover an estimated $12 million in additional monies. The state's investment will receive a 75% federal match.
My name is Peter Moore, and I'm a budget analyst with OSPB. Governor Hobbs continues to prioritize reproductive access initiatives as the executive budget includes $727,000 general fund and $5.5 million expenditure authority placeholders to continue the 12-month postpartum continuous eligibility period implemented by Access in 2023, allow Access members to receive a 12-month supply of contraception in a single visit, expand the family planning coverage eligibility to an estimated 5,600 Arizonans. There are 179,000 self-identified tribal Medicaid members in Arizona, and the executive budget invests in multiple initiatives to ensure that they receive the best care. The initiatives include a $7 million one-time appropriation from the general fund for the Attorney General's office to assist tribes as a part of the ongoing response to the sober living home crisis. The funding may support grants to the tribal governments, Indian Health Service, tribal-operated health programs, urban Indian organizations, or other entities approved by tribal leaders through consultation with the Attorney General. $1.3 million general fund and $221.5 million federal expenditure authority ongoing to cover traditional healing services at Indian Health Services facilities. In October 2024, CMS approved a 2-year pilot program that allowed several states to cover traditional healing services for the first time. This investment will be used to provide services developed and practiced by generations of tribal healers. And $226,900 general fund and $226,900 expenditure authority for 4 positions within the Arizona Advisory Council on Indian Healthcare. These positions include education and training to address health-related issues on tribal land. The executive budget includes $92 million ongoing from the general fund, $193 million in ongoing expenditure authority, and $14 million in other non-appropriated funds over the next 3 fiscal years to increase provider rates by 6% for All-Tex EPD and the Division of Developmental Disabilities, or DDD, providers. The funding will make provider rates more competitive, which in turn will alleviate workforce challenges and expand access to care. Access has also enhanced its provider enrollment process to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. To support these enhancements, the executive budget includes $481,900 and $1.1 million in federal EA ongoing for an additional 22 positions. These positions will address growing provider enrollment and expertise processing timelines. The positions will also support providers through the redetermination process, which is required from providers every 5 years. To address the increasing caseload costs at Access for the upcoming fiscal year in 2026, the executive budget includes the ongoing $48 million from the general funds, $125 million other funds, and $161 million in federal expenditure authority. The $125 million funding comprised of other funding is comprised of the state share of the prescription drug rebate fund. Primary factors that contribute to the increase are projected capitation rate of 4%, a projected membership growth of 2.15%, and a negative 0.55 decrease in Arizona's federal Medicaid match rate.
Hi, I am Rudy Sen, a budget analyst with OSPB. The executive budget includes $1.9 million in one-time funding for facility improvements at the Arizona State Hospital to improve the safety for both patients and the community. This funding will allow the hospital to complete 9 projects and mitigate safety concerns caused by failures in systems such as the keycard system and perimeter detection system. The executive budget includes $127,000 in ongoing funding from the general fund to hire 1 food safety scientist at the Department of Agriculture's State Agricultural Laboratory. The department is seeking accreditation to perform high-level testing in the event of an outbreak, equivalent to that done by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. With this new accreditation and additional position, the department is expected to be better equipped to protect the health of individuals and families. Additionally, the executive budget includes $119,300 in ongoing funding and $45,000 in one-time funding from the general fund to hire 1 meat and poultry inspection program supervisor to expand state inspections for meat processing businesses. The funding will provide the department with enhanced capacity to conduct inspections of meat processing facilities, creating more potential for meat processing plants in the state to expand operations or open new facilities.
Since Governor Hobbs has taken office, $165 million have been deposited into the Housing Trust Fund. $150 million were deposited in FY2024, and $15 million was deposited in FY2025. This slide shows the totals of some of the grants that the Department of Housing has awarded out of this fund with these deposits for services such as rapid rehousing, home ownership counseling, extreme weather preparedness, and more. The executive budget includes a $15 million deposit into the Housing Trust Fund. The Department of Housing continues to meet with stakeholders to understand areas of most need and release funding opportunities in alignment with feedback. The executive budget also includes a $10 million revenue reduction to expand the Arizona Low-Income Housing Tax Credit by 6 years, through fiscal year 2031, bringing the total additional investment to the program to $600 million. The Arizona LIHTC works alongside the federal LIHTC to increase available credits, which in turn promotes investment in affordable housing throughout the state, reduces housing instability for Arizonans, creates jobs, and increases tax revenue generation from construction activity. The executive budget invests $7 million from the general fund to the Arizona State Museum to fully comply with the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, which requires universities and museums to return indigenous human remains and artifacts to the Native American tribes from which they were taken. As mentioned in the Affordable and Thriving Economy section, the Governor's Bright Futures AZ initiative aims to decrease childcare costs for Arizona families, increase childcare availability, address early childhood education workforce needs, and support childcare providers. The total investment, including state and federal dollars, is $12.7 million. This will develop a public-private partnership, establish an out-of-school time grant for youth ages 5 to 12, create a child care tax credit for businesses, provide coaching and tools to child care providers, distribute early childhood educator scholarships, expand the microbusiness loan program, and develop a child care web tool to help families find available child care options. The executive budget includes $191.1 million to provide additional support for the Department of Economic Security's Child Care Assistance Program, including maintaining a 50% high-quality enhancement rate that increases the payment made to providers that make certain criteria, helping child care providers recruit and retain educators and sustain operations, and implementing system updates to ensure compliance with federal Childcare and Development Fund final rule timelines. This funding level will allow the department to admit households from the child care waitlist and is expected to cut the projected waitlist in half.
This slide highlights 4 notable investments across DES, Access, and the Supreme Court aimed at serving vulnerable adults. First, the executive budget includes $7 million for the Department of Economic Security Adult Protective Services, or APS program, which has experienced substantial growth in recent history. This funding will ensure that the APS can maintain a 1 to 25 investigator to case ratio, which is considered a national best practice. Second, the executive budget includes $2.5 million for the area agencies on aging. Third, the executive budget includes an increase in funding to add 28 pre-admission assessors to address medical eligibility in all techs. Fourth, the executive budget includes $349,900 to support the fiduciary oversight activities within the Supreme Court's Certification and Licensing Division. The funding will provide an additional investigator position for licensing and auditing those that provide professional services to vulnerable individuals and supports other operational needs of the division, such as the case management system and specialized training for investigators. In fiscal year 2026, the executive budget includes $321.7 million from the general fund for DDD caseload management. In fiscal year 2025, $109.2 million from the general fund is included for higher than budgeted capitation and caseload growth in the DDD program. The DDD program is projected to encounter cash flow issues in April or early May. If additional funding for fiscal year 2025 is not provided by that time, DES will be unable to reimburse vendors for medically necessary services, which will result in significant operational disruptions in direct care staffing and cause delays in critical services for DDD members.
The executive budget pursues a multifaceted approach to addressing the needs of Arizona's veterans, with 4 investments to create new and improve upon existing programs. These investments include a $5 million one-time deposit for the Homes for Heroes program, an initiative at the Department of Veterans Services, which will create a statewide plan in FY2026 to address veterans' homelessness across the state throughout the next decade. $1.9 million in one-time funding to serve as the state match to draw down an additional $3.5 million in federal monies to replace the HVAC system at the Tucson Veterans Home. This funding allows the Department of Veterans Services to proactively replace the system while also reducing the anticipated cost of future repairs. $1.2 million in ongoing funding for a 10% salary increase for nurses working at the veterans' homes around the state. And $2 million in one-time funding to supplement the State Home for Veterans Trust Fund, which has been depleted as a result of a decreased census after COVID, unexpected costs associated with the construction of the Flagstaff home, and a delay in the Flagstaff home's opening. This investment assures that the State Home for Veterans Trust Fund will not encounter cash flow issues during the current fiscal year, and that the Department of Veterans Services can continue to serve and provide for Arizona's veterans. Due to federal legislation, federal funding for congregate care at the Arizona Department of Child Safety has decreased significantly. The Families First Prevention Services Act, enacted in 2018, restricted federal reimbursement for group home placements to the first 14 days. This change resulted in a 90% decrease in federally reimbursable expenditures. Since FY2021, federal reimbursements for congregate care have decreased from $45.1 million to an estimated $5 million in FY2025. Over this time frame, DCS has been successful in reducing the number of children in congregate care from 1,995 children in FY2021 to 1,553 children in FY2025. To provide adequate funding for the children remaining in congregate care, the executive budget includes $23.2 million general fund ongoing in FY2026 and a $29.4 million general fund supplemental appropriation in FY2025. This chart represents additional funding needed at the Department of Child Safety for both caseload growth and reductions in federal funding. Key investments include a $2.2 million ongoing general fund for a projected 10.5% increase in caseload for the permanent guardianship program, $1.9 million ongoing general fund provided for an increase in extended foster care caseload. Extended foster care supports youth that voluntarily enroll in foster care until age 21, helping them work towards educational and occupational goals. And $1.4 million ongoing GF is provided for the Family Connections and Nurturing Parenting programs. Current federal funding for both programs ends at the end of federal fiscal year 2025. Given time and demonstration of evidence of effectiveness, the programs could unlock additional federal funding in the future.
Hello, my name is Tyler Hagedorn, a senior budget analyst for OSPB. The executive budget includes over $500 million in K-12 education investments in fiscal year 2026, including a $285.6 million increase in funding to basic state aid to ensure no reduction in education funding for public schools associated with the expiration of Proposition 123. A $173.2 million increase in funding to basic state aid associated with the 2% inflation adjustment in fiscal year 2025 base level amount, transportation route mile factor, and charter additional assistance. A $37 million and $29 million investment for early reinstatements to the free and reduced price lunch or FERPL Group B weight and additional assistance increases respectively. $3.8 million to continue the school meals grant program, which reduces or eliminates the school meal copay for families eligible for reduced price meals, $1 million for the Native American Code Writers program, which supports the development of computer science courses and computer labs for students in tribal serving districts and charters, and $250,000 to modernize the teacher certification system, which is used to certify and issue teacher certifications. This funding will be utilized to automate features within the system, including issuance of several teaching certificates and matching of transcripts. Additionally, the Department of Education reports that since universal expansion of the Empowerment Scholarship Account, or ESA program, in school year 2023, 73% of ESA vouchers have been awarded to participants with no history in the public school system. A majority of the universal ESA population has no history in public school, which completely generates a new cost to the general fund. Without action, the universal ESA program costs are projected to outpace the pre-universal program costs in fiscal years 2025 and 2026, with universal enrollment reaching 70,833 and pre-universal reaching 24,008. Pre-universal costs costing $448 million and universal costs costing $516 million, for a total ESA program cost of almost $1 billion. The executive budget implements a scaled income cap that modifies and repeals prior year eligibility for universal ESA beginning in fiscal year 2026. The projected annual general fund savings by this reform is $150 million. The executive estimates that without universal ESA reform, the state will incur an ESA enrollment increase of over 12,000 students in fiscal year 2026, raising total program enrollment to over 94,000 students, and total program cost to $964 million. Implementation of universal ESA reform is projected to yield a net increase of 2,900 students in fiscal year 2026, raising total program enrollment to over 85,000 students and limiting total program cost to $814 million. Prior to universal expansion of ESAs, the total enrollment under the program was 11,699. This reform fully protects the pre-universal ESA program and ensures that families will continue to have access if their child has special needs, attended a school or school district that was assigned a letter grade D or F, resides on a Native American reservation, is the ward of the juvenile court and have been placed or have been pending placement in the permanent adoption or guardianship, has a parent who is legally deaf or blind, or has parents who are in the active service of the U.S. Armed Forces. The School Facilities Division of the Department of Administration has two primary programs: construction of new school facilities and building renewal at existing facilities. The executive budget includes $183.3 million for building renewal projects at school facilities. In addition to the baseline funding for this purpose, this brings the total building renewal funding to $200 million. The executive budget also includes $113.7 million for one-time year one construction costs at 7 schools, land acquisition at 2 schools, and some site condition projects. These projects were reviewed and approved at the December 2024 School Facilities Oversight Board meeting. These new school construction projects include a new high school in Tolleson, 2 new K-8 schools in Levine and Nutteberg, a new middle school in Snowflake, and 3 end-of-useful life projects in Chino Valley, Holbrook, and St. David.
Hello, my name is Remy Godin, and I am a budget analyst with the Office of Strategic Planning and Budgeting. Along with the rest of the state, Arizona universities took a 3.5% ongoing operating cut in fiscal year 2025. The executive budget invests $23.2 million to restore these operating cuts on an ongoing basis. The Teachers Academy Scholarship Program provides funding and support to future Arizona educators in return for a commitment to teach in an Arizona public school, and helps to address the state's teacher workforce shortage. This investment brings total funding to $30 million in fiscal year 2026. The Arizona Promise Program's aim is to make post-secondary education more accessible and affordable for Arizona students from working families who attend one of the state universities. This investment brings total funding to $40 million in fiscal year 2026. The executive budget includes a one-time increase in bonding authority up to $1.125 billion, increased from the current amount of $800 million, providing an additional $325 million of bonding authority. The additional bonding authority increases the university's capacity to fund capital projects and enhance the student experience. The executive budget invests $3 million into the Nursing Education Investment Program at the community colleges to increase the number of nursing graduates in Arizona. It also invests $3 million in the Dual Enrollment Student Development Program to increase access to post-secondary attainment, and $6 million for adult education to provide alternative study services that lead to a high school diploma and an industry-recognized credential or community college degree. These formula funding adjustments ensure continued support to community colleges for their operations and provision of student services. The executive budget includes a $424,600 increase to operating state aid, a $626,000 increase to equalization aid, and an $871,000 increase to STEM and workforce aid.
The executive budget creates a new Colorado River litigation fund under the Department of Water Resources with a $1 million general fund deposit and a transfer of $2 million from prior non-lapsing special line items for Colorado River legal expenses, for a total investment of $3 million. The current guidelines for the operation and management of the Colorado River system will expire at the end of calendar year 2026. Arizona and the 6 other basin states are negotiating the post-2026 guidelines with the Federal Bureau of Reclamation in order to develop a framework that more sustainably manages the Colorado River system. These new guidelines are expected to be announced in 2026. While Arizona will continue to pursue good faith negotiations that result in a consensus outcome for more sustainable Colorado River management, this appropriation ensures that the Department of Water Resources has funding set aside to defend Arizona's interests and water users who depend on the state's precious Colorado River entitlement. The map at the right displays the upper and lower Colorado River basins and the 7 basin states: Wyoming, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, California, Arizona, and New Mexico. The executive budget includes $30 million for fire suppression funding. The Department of Forestry and Fire Management has received funding represented by the orange bars that has not kept pace with spending represented by the purple bars. The green line shows the number of wildfires from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2024. The executive budget also includes a 15% pay increase for state firefighting positions. Firefighting staff are among the lowest paid when compared to market. Between 30 to 48% are below market depending on the class. Firefighters perform critical and extremely dangerous functions in support of public safety. This funding will have a direct impact at 3 agencies, 12 job classifications, and 108 employees. The executive budget includes an ongoing $1 million deposit from the general fund into the Arts Trust Fund. The Arts Trust Fund under the Arts Commission is used to provide grants to nonprofits, governmental units, and community centers for the purpose of producing, presenting, teaching, or serving the arts. As of October 2024, the Arts Commission has awarded 477 grants totaling around $2.5 million to 62 cities and towns. According to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, arts and culture industries contribute more than $14 billion to the state's economy and supports more than 80,000 jobs in Arizona. Of the fiscal year 2025 arts grants awarded to date, most of the funding was dedicated to organization grants, as shown by the chart on the left. The nonprofits arts sector in Arizona provided $457.6 million in income paid to residents as displayed by the chart on the right. The executive budget includes a one-time $2.5 million deposit from the general fund into the State Parks and Trails Heritage Fund. The Heritage Fund provides grants for park development, historic preservation, non-motorized trails, and outdoor education. This program has been utilized as a catalyst by grant recipients to leverage state funding for additional funding. The table displays that as of December 2024, match funding for prior deposits have totaled around $14.5 million.
The executive budget includes $217,200 in ongoing funding and $231,000 in one-time funding from other funds to expand the State Parks Family Campout Program. The program provides weekend campout events that teach families with kids that have little to no experience camping about various camping activities and encourage engagement with the outdoors. There are 16 annual campout events that serve about 160 families. With this investment, the state parks could double that number of events and families served. This slide showcases the investments in the executive budget that the executive is making at the Game and Fish Department. While each item is not discussed individually, there are some key investments that are worth highlighting, including $6.9 million in one-time funding from other funds to cover dam remediation costs for 2 state-owned high-hazard dams. This funding will draw down $11.6 million in federal grant funding. $4.7 million in one-time funding from other funds is included to cover the second phase of renovations at state-owned fish hatcheries. And $2.3 million in ongoing funding from other funds for wildlife habitat enhancement projects that maintain and expand wildlife species distribution.
The executive budget includes funding for a targeted statewide pay package that aims to reduce government waste, improve service efficiency, and reduce the cost of replacing employees. This package focuses on the lowest paid positions within the state workforce, those earning $40,000 a year or less, which, despite making 10% of the workforce, accounted for 25% of all turnover in fiscal year 2024. The typical cost to replace an employee ranges from one half to twice that employee's annual salary. In fiscal year 2024, the estimated cost of turnover among state employees within this range ranged from $30 million to above $120.2 million. To combat this cost, the executive budget includes the following ongoing investments: $33.3 million in general funds and $1.7 million in other appropriated funds for a 5% frontline law enforcement and correctional officer salary increase, $11.6 million in general fund and $31.8 million in other appropriated funds for a statewide 2% salary increase, and $2.2 million general fund and $11 million in other appropriated funds for targeted increases for firefighters, state veterans home nursing positions, the Arizona Pioneers Home, and state customer service trades and blue-collar roles, and to raise the state employee minimum wage to $17 an hour. This front-end investment of $91.6 million, prioritizing dangerous, difficult-to-fill, and low-earning roles, offsets the annual cost of turnover, recruitment, onboarding, and new employee training, and will help the state attract and retain talented workers for years to come. The executive budget includes one-time funding to support the Special Employee Health Insurance Trust Fund, or HITIF, which supports the state's self-insured medical, pharmacy, and dental insurance for employees. The table shown here demonstrates the financial position of the fund from fiscal 2016 to fiscal year 2016, assuming no new premium increases. The fund has a history of transfers, including deposits totaling $83 million from HITIF into the general fund in fiscal 2016 and 2017. In fiscal year 2022, an ongoing adjustment was made to raise employer premiums and resolve a potential shortfall. Revenues from that increase were realized in fiscal year 2023. Since that time, the state has enacted one-time employer premium increases each year to address further increases in the cost of healthcare. In fiscal year 2026, the fund is expected to receive revenues of $857 million and to incur $1.3 billion in expenses. In response, the executive budget proposes one-time employer premium increases of $197.8 million general fund, $32.9 million in other appropriated funds, and $192.6 million in non-appropriated funds. In addition, the executive proposes a transfer of $25 million annually from the general fund into HITIF. This infusion, coupled with one-time employer premium increases, maintains the fund's health and enables the ADOA Benefits Services Division to meet rising costs of state employee health care. Together, the measures result in a fiscal 2026 projected ending balance of approximately $100 million.
Capital improvements to state facilities fall into one of three designations: building renewal, capital improvements, major maintenance, and capital projects. 3 state building systems belonging to the Arizona Department of Administration, the Department of Transportation, and the state universities require routine maintenance and critical repairs referred to as building renewal. These monies are appropriated to the managing agency, which then allocates expenses to various projects within its system. Capital improvements and major maintenance are like building renewal. They address critical repairs, fire and life safety needs, but are appropriated directly to agencies from dedicated fund sources. Capital projects are appropriated for specific purposes, typically new construction and procurement, demolition, or complete renovation of a structure. General fund investments in the fiscal year 2026 executive budget include $30.4 million for HVAC and replacements at the Tucson and Yuma state prisons, $13.2 million for Department of Public Safety electrical upgrades and modular office replacements, $1.9 million for HVAC replacement at the Department of Veteran Services Tucson Veterans Home. Certain projects take advantage of a federal drawdown. Projects in the Department of Emergency Military Affairs building renewal requests are 50% federally funded, representing $700,000 in total investment. Proposed Department of Veteran Service Tucson Veterans Home HVAC monies are contingent on a 65% federal match for a total of $5.4 million. A full list of building renewal and capital projects appears in the capital projects section of the executive budget. The executive budget includes a one-time general fund deposit of $13 million for the State Match Advantage Rural Transportation Fund, which is known as the SMART Fund. The SMART Fund provides funding to counties and municipalities outside of Maricopa and Pima counties, as well as a portion for ADOT, for shovel-ready transportation projects, federal transportation grant application fees, and match funding to draw down competitive federal funding. Since the fund's creation in fiscal year 2023, the State Transportation Board has awarded $48.9 million from the SMART Fund, which has resulted in an additional $138.6 million being competitively awarded through federal transportation grants. To counteract the effect of rising prices for materials needed to perform highway maintenance and ensure the safety of Arizona travelers, the fiscal year 2026 executive budget provides a historic ongoing investment of $17.5 million from the State Highway Fund to include 38.16 new lane miles into the maintenance schedule and to target maintenance of lane miles that are in poor and fair condition. This funding also continues support for the South Mountain Freeway and the I-17 flex lanes. I now turn it over to the director for closing thoughts.
Thank you for watching our presentation of the fiscal year 2026 executive budget. We hope you enjoyed. To close us out, I want to acknowledge the amazing OSPB team for all of their hard work. Thank you, OSPB team.